Question 1. During an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer producing sterile implantable devices, an auditor is reviewing the labeling process. The device's packaging clearly displays the product name, manufacturer's details, lot number, and a prominent sterile indicator. However, the auditor notices that the specific method of sterilization used, e.g., gamma irradiation, and the date of sterilization are not explicitly stated on the immediate product label, although this information is available in the batch production records. The audit is focused on compliance with ISO 13485-2016 and relevant regional regulations for medical device labeling. Which aspect of the labeling process requires the most immediate attention from the auditor to ensure compliance? Option A. Review of the manufacturer's internal procedures for generating batch production records to ensure their completeness. Option B. Verification that the label includes all information required by applicable regulatory standards, including the sterilization method and date if mandated for user or traceability purposes. Option C. Confirmation that the sterile indicator is clearly visible and unambiguous to the end user. Option D. Assessment of the aesthetic design and font size of the product name for user readability. Correct answer is B. Verification that the label includes all information required by applicable regulatory standards, including the sterilization method and date if mandated for user or traceability purposes. Explanation. The core principle of an internal audit under ISO 13485-2016 is to verify conformity to the standard and the organization's own documented quality management system, as well as applicable regulatory requirements. When auditing medical device labeling, an internal auditor must ensure that the labels contain all information mandated by relevant regulations, such as the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's FDA 21 CFR Part 801, or the European Union's Medical Device Regulation, MDR, EU 2017/745. These regulations often specify details like the device name, manufacturer's name and address, lot or serial number, storage conditions, sterilization information, and expiration dates. The auditor's role is not to redesign the label, but to confirm that the documented processes for label creation, review, approval, and implementation are followed, and that the resulting labels meet all specified requirements. Therefore, verifying the presence and accuracy of all required information on the label, in accordance with documented procedures and regulatory mandates, is the primary objective. The auditor would check if the device's intended use is clearly stated, if any necessary warnings or precautions are present, and if the lot number or batch code is traceable to production records. The presence of a CE mark, if applicable for the target market, would also be a critical check. The auditor's focus is on the asterisk system asterisk for ensuring label accuracy and compliance, not just the aesthetic appearance of the label. Question 2. Following the completion of an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer's design and development process, the audit team leader is preparing for the closing meeting. The audit identified several areas where documented procedures were not consistently followed, leading to potential deviations from the intended product realization. The audit team has compiled objective evidence, including records of design reviews, verification activities, and validation protocols. What is the most appropriate action for the audit team leader to take during the closing meeting concerning these findings? Option A. Discuss the overall effectiveness of the quality management system based on the findings, highlighting areas that require immediate management intervention. Option B. Provide a detailed list of recommended corrective actions for each identified nonconformity to ensure immediate system improvement. Option C. Present the documented nonconformities and opportunities for improvement, supported by the collected objective evidence, and allow audit management to discuss and acknowledge the findings. Option D. Introduce potential future regulatory compliance issues that might arise if the identified process deviations are not addressed, to emphasize the urgency. The correct answer is C. Present the documented nonconformities and opportunities for improvement, supported by the collected objective evidence, and allow audit management to discuss and acknowledge the findings. Explanation. The closing meeting of an internal audit serves as a critical juncture for communicating findings and ensuring alignment between the audit team and the audit. According to ISO 13485, 2016, specifically Clause 8, 2, 4, the organization must conduct internal audits at planned intervals to determine whether the quality management system conforms to the planned arrangements, to the requirements of this international standard, and to the quality management system, requirements established by the organization, and whether it is effectively implemented and maintained. The closing meeting is the formal conclusion of the audit activities, where the audit team presents its observations. These observations include conformity to requirements, nonconformities major and minor, and opportunities for improvement. The primary purpose of the closing meeting is to provide a clear, concise, and factual summary of the audit results. It is essential that the discussion focuses on objective evidence gathered during the audit and avoids introducing new findings or making definitive judgments about the auditee's overall system performance beyond what the evidence supports. The audit team's role is to report what was observed, not to dictate solutions or assign blame. The auditee's management team is responsible for reviewing the findings and determining appropriate corrective actions. Therefore, the most appropriate action for the audit team to take regarding observations during the closing meeting is to present them clearly and objectively, allowing the auditee's management to acknowledge and discuss the findings. Question 3. During an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer specializing in implantable cardiac rhythm management devices, an auditor discovers a nonconformity in the design history file, DHF, related to a previously identified and addressed risk associated with lead insulation integrity. The risk assessment documentation indicates a revised mitigation strategy was implemented, but the corresponding design specifications and manufacturing process documentation within the DHF have not been updated to reflect this change. Which aspect of ISO 13485, 2016 is the auditor most likely to cite as a nonconformity in this scenario? Option A. Insufficient establishment of a quality policy and objectives for the organization's risk management framework. Option B. Lack of documented procedures for post-market surveillance activities impacting design changes. Option C. Failure to implement a corrective action process that addresses the root cause of design flaws. Option D. Inadequate control of documents, specifically the failure to update design and manufacturing documentation to reflect revised risk management activities. The correct answer is D. Inadequate control of documents, specifically the failure to update design and manufacturing documentation to reflect revised risk management activities. Explanation. The core of this question lies in understanding the interconnectedness of documentation control and the risk management process within ISO 13485-2016. Clause 4.2.1. General mandates the establishment, documentation, implementation, and maintenance of a quality management system. Clause 7.1. Planning of product realization requires planning for product realization processes, which inherently includes risk management. Clause 7.1.2. Risk management specifically states that risk management shall be applied as a requirement of this international standard throughout the product realization process. Furthermore, Clause 4.2.1a requires the quality manual to include or make reference to the quality policy, objectives, and a description of the QMS. Clause 4.2.3. Control of documents mandates that documents required by the QMS shall be controlled. This control includes review, approval, distribution, and change management. When an internal audit identifies a nonconformity related to a product design that has undergone risk assessment, the auditor must verify that the documentation reflecting the design and its associated risk controls is accurate and has been updated to align with any corrective actions taken. This ensures that the documented information accurately represents the current state of the product and its risk management, thereby fulfilling the requirements of both document control and risk management throughout product realization. The auditor's role is to verify that the system's processes, including the flow of information between risk management activities and documentation updates, are effective and compliant with the standard. The absence of updated documentation reflecting revised risk assessments would be a finding against Clause 4.2.3 and potentially Clause 7.1.2 if the risk management process itself was not adequately documented or implemented in conjunction with design changes. Question 4. During an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer specializing in implantable cardiac devices, an auditor is reviewing the human resources processes related to personnel involved in the sterilization of critical components. The organization has a documented procedure for training and competency assessment. However, the auditor observes that while training records exist for many personnel, the objective evidence demonstrating the effectiveness of this training in ensuring consistent, high-quality sterilization outcomes is lacking, with a recent minor nonconformance reported in the sterilization batch records. What is the most appropriate action for the internal auditor to take to address this finding concerning the human resource management process, as per ISO 13485, 2016 requirements? Option A. Document a nonconformance against Clause 6. 2. Emphasizing the lack of objective evidence for training effectiveness and its potential impact on product quality, and recommend a review and enhancement of the competency assessment process. Option B. Note the minor nonconformance in sterilization batch records as a separate finding and focus the human resources audit on the completeness of training documentation rather than its effectiveness. Option C. Recommend the organization revise its quality policy to include a stronger emphasis on continuous professional development for all personnel involved in critical manufacturing processes. Option D. Provide immediate feedback to the human resources manager, suggesting they conduct additional hands-on training for all sterilization personnel to rectify the observed competency gap. The correct answer is A. Document a nonconformance against Clause 6. 2. Emphasizing the lack of objective evidence for training effectiveness and its potential impact on product quality, and recommend a review and enhancement of the competency assessment process. Explanation. The core of this question lies in understanding the auditor's role in verifying the effectiveness of human resource management processes within a medical device organization, specifically concerning personnel competency for critical roles. ISO 13485, 2016, in Clause 6. 2. Mandates that personnel performing work affecting product quality must be competent on the basis of appropriate education, training, skills, and experience. An internal auditor's responsibility is to assess whether the organization has established and maintains documented procedures for determining competence, providing training, evaluating the effectiveness of training, and ensuring personnel are aware of the relevance and importance of their activities and how they contribute to the achievement of the quality objectives. When auditing the human resources function, an auditor would look for evidence that the organization has a systematic approach to identifying training needs, delivering appropriate training, and verifying that the training has resulted in the desired competence. This involves reviewing training records, competency assessments, and performance evaluations. The objective is not to dictate specific training content, but to ensure the process for developing and maintaining competence is robust and documented, thereby supporting the organization's commitment to product safety and regulatory compliance. Therefore, the most comprehensive and accurate approach for an auditor to verify the effectiveness of the human resource process related to personnel competence is to examine the documented procedures and the evidence of their implementation, focusing on the documented process for competence determination and the records that demonstrate its application. Question 5. An internal audit of a medical device manufacturer's quality management system operating under ISO 13485, 2016, reveals that the recent management review meeting documented several discussions regarding customer complaints and audit findings. However, the minutes of the meeting do not clearly articulate specific decisions or actions that were formulated to address the identified issues or to improve the overall effectiveness of the quality management system. Based on the requirements of ISO 13485, 2016, what is the primary deficiency an internal auditor would identify in this scenario? Option A. The management review did not sufficiently consider all required inputs, such as product conformity and process performance data. Option B. The management review failed to generate clear outputs, including decisions and actions, for improving the quality management system and product. Option C. The management review meeting was not conducted at the required frequency, as stipulated by the organization's internal procedures. Option D. The management review minutes were not distributed to all relevant personnel within the organization in a timely manner. The correct answer is B. The management review failed to generate clear outputs, including decisions and actions, for improving the quality management system and product. Explanation. The management review process under ISO 13485-2016 is a critical input for ensuring the continued suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the quality management system. Clause 5.6 outlines the requirements for management review, including the inputs and outputs. Clause 5.6.2 specifies the inputs, which must include information on quality objectives and quality policy results, status of preventive and corrective action, customer feedback and complaints, performance of processes and conformity of products, audit results, and changes that could affect the quality management system. Clause 5.6.3 details the outputs, which must include decisions and actions related to opportunities for improvement of the quality management system and product, and any need for changes to the quality management system. An internal auditor's role is to verify that these requirements are met. Therefore, when auditing the management review process, the auditor must verify that the outputs of the review directly address the identified inputs and lead to concrete actions for system improvement or modification. Specifically, the outputs must demonstrate that decisions have been made and actions initiated to enhance the effectiveness of the QMS and the product itself, based on the comprehensive information presented during the review. This ensures that management is actively engaged in driving continuous improvement and maintaining compliance with regulatory requirements. Question 6. When auditing the effectiveness of a corrective action taken to address a recurring issue with a critical medical device component's dimensional accuracy, what is the primary focus for the internal auditor to determine if the corrective action has been successful according to ISO 13485-2016 requirements? Option A. Review of the records demonstrating the investigation into the nonconformity and the development of the corrective action plan. Option B. Confirmation that the documented corrective action plan has been fully implemented by the relevant personnel. Option C. Verification that the identified root cause has been addressed and the nonconformity has not reappeared in subsequent production batches. Option D. Assessment of whether the nonconformity is no longer being identified during routine outgoing quality control inspections. The correct answer is C. Verification that the identified root cause has been addressed and the nonconformity has not reappeared in subsequent production batches. Explanation. The core of this question lies in understanding the auditor's responsibility for verifying the effectiveness of corrective actions, specifically in relation to the root cause of nonconformities. ISO 13485-2016, Clause 8.5.2 mandates that the organization shall take action to eliminate the cause of nonconformities to prevent recurrence. An internal auditor's role is to assess whether these actions have been implemented and if they are indeed effective. Effectiveness is not just about the action being taken, but about the problem being resolved and not recurring. Therefore, the auditor must verify that the identified root cause has been addressed and that the nonconformity has not reappeared, which demonstrates the corrective action's efficacy. This verification process is crucial for ensuring the continuous improvement of the quality management system. The other options are less encompassing. Simply verifying the implementation of the documented corrective action plan, Option B, does not confirm its effectiveness. Confirming that the nonconformity is no longer observed during routine operations, Option C, is part of effectiveness, but doesn't explicitly link back to the root cause. Reviewing the documentation of the corrective action process, Option D, is a procedural check, not an assessment of the outcome's impact. Question 7. During an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer producing a novel diagnostic instrument, the auditor observes a recurring pattern of customer feedback, indicating that, while the instrument consistently meets its specified performance parameters, users find its operational workflow cumbersome and inefficient, leading to increased error rates in sample processing. This feedback is not directly linked to product nonconformity, as per the established criteria. What is the most appropriate action for the internal auditor to recommend to ensure the QMS effectively addresses this situation? Option A. Recommend implementing corrective actions only for those instances where the instrument's performance deviates from its specified parameters, as per the nonconforming product procedure. Option B. Initiate a review of the design and development processes, focusing on design inputs, verification, and validation activities to ensure they adequately captured and validated user needs and intended use. Option C. Advise the organization to increase the frequency of regulatory reporting for all user-related issues to ensure compliance with post-market surveillance requirements. Option D. Document the customer feedback in the complaint log and ensure it is categorized as user experience feedback without further investigation into its root cause within the QMS. The correct answer is B. Initiate a review of the design and development processes, focusing on design inputs, verification, and validation activities to ensure they adequately captured and validated user needs and intended use. Explanation. The core of this question lies in understanding the relationship between customer feedback, product conformity, and the effectiveness of the quality management system, QMS, as mandated by ISO 13485-2016. Specifically, Clause 8.2.1 Feedback requires organizations to establish a process for obtaining and using feedback. Clause 8.2.2 Complaint handling and Clause 8.2.3 Reporting to regulatory authorities are also relevant. The effectiveness of the QMS is assessed through various means, including internal audits, Clause 8.2.4, management reviews, Clause 9.3, and monitoring of processes and products. When a significant number of customer complaints relate to product performance issues that do not result in non-conforming product as defined by the QMS, i.e., the product still meets specifications but not user expectations, it indicates a potential weakness in the design verification and validation processes, Clause 7.3, or a disconnect between user needs and product specifications. An internal auditor's role is to assess if the organization's QMS is effective in addressing such issues. Simply documenting the complaints, option B, is a part of the process but not the full solution. Implementing corrective actions solely based on non-conforming product reports, option C, misses the nuance of user dissatisfaction with functionally compliant products. Relying on regulatory reporting alone, option D, is reactive and does not proactively address systemic issues. The most effective approach for an internal auditor to identify and address this systemic issue is to investigate the root cause of the discrepancy between product specifications and user expectations, which often points to deficiencies in the design and development phases and requires a thorough review of design inputs, outputs, verification, and validation activities to ensure they adequately capture and address user needs and intended use. This aligns with the QMS objective of ensuring product suitability for its intended purpose and customer satisfaction. Question 8. Consider a scenario where an internal auditor is preparing to conduct an audit of a medical device manufacturer's sterile packaging process, a critical control point under FDA 21 CFR Part 820 and ISO 13485-2016. During the opening meeting, the auditor intends to confirm the audit scope and objectives. Which of the following actions best reflects the auditor's primary responsibility at this initial stage to ensure the audit's effectiveness and compliance with regulatory expectations? Option A. Explicitly state that the audit will focus on verifying compliance with specific clauses of ISO 13485-2016 and relevant sections of FDA 21 CFR Part 820, outlining the areas to be examined and the expected outcomes. Option B. Provide a detailed presentation on the auditor's personal experience and qualifications in auditing medical device manufacturing processes. Option C. Ask the auditee to present their standard operating procedures for sterile packaging before the audit team begins its assessment of the process. Option D. Request a comprehensive review of all historical audit findings related to sterile packaging, including any past nonconformities and corrective actions. The correct answer is A. Explicitly state that the audit will focus on verifying compliance with specific clauses of ISO 13485-2016 and relevant sections of FDA 21 CFR Part 820, outlining the areas to be examined and the expected outcomes. Explanation. The opening meeting of an internal audit is a critical step in establishing the audit's scope, objectives, and methodology. It serves as the formal commencement of the audit process and ensures all relevant parties are aligned. According to ISO 19011-2018, which provides guidelines for auditing management systems and is a foundational standard for internal auditing practices, the opening meeting should confirm the audit's feasibility, discuss the audit plan, introduce the audit team, and clarify communication protocols. The purpose is to ensure mutual understanding and cooperation. An effective opening meeting sets a positive and productive tone for the entire audit, facilitating the collection of objective evidence and the identification of potential areas for improvement within the organization's quality management system, as required by ISO 13485, 2016, for medical device manufacturers. This includes confirming the availability of resources and personnel necessary for the audit to proceed as planned. Question 9. A medical device manufacturer, Meditech Innovations, which produces sterile implantable devices, is preparing for an upcoming internal audit of its design and development process. The audit is intended to verify compliance with ISO 13485, 2016, specifically focusing on design verification and validation activities, as well as adherence to the EU Medical Device Regulation 2017/745 concerning clinical evaluation, which preparatory action would most effectively ensure the auditor can thoroughly assess Meditech Innovations' adherence to these requirements during the audit. Option A. Reviewing the latest version of the quality manual and design history file for the implantable device, cross-referencing design inputs, outputs, verification, and validation records against ISO 13485, 2016, Clauses 7, 3, and relevant sections of the EU MDR 2017/745. Option B. Requesting a demonstration of the company's complaint handling system and post-market surveillance activities to understand how feedback is incorporated. Option C. Interviewing the head of the R&D department to obtain a general overview of their design and development procedures and any perceived challenges. Option D. Examining a sample of production records and complaint logs to identify any trends that might indicate design deficiencies. Correct answer is A. Reviewing the latest version of the quality manual and design history file for the implantable device, cross-referencing design inputs, outputs, verification, and validation records against ISO 13485, 2016, Clauses 7, 3, and relevant sections of the EU MDR 2017/745. Explanation. The preparation for an internal audit under ISO 13485, 2016 requires a systematic approach that ensures all relevant aspects of the quality management system are covered. This involves understanding the scope of the audit, identifying the specific clauses of the standard and applicable regulatory requirements, such as the EU Medical Device Regulation 2017/745 or the US FDA Quality System Regulation 21 CFR Part 820, depending on the target market, and determining the audit objectives. A crucial step is developing an audit plan, which outlines the audit scope, objectives, criteria, duration, and personnel. This plan should be communicated to the auditee in advance. The auditor must also gather and review relevant documentation, including the quality manual, procedures, work instructions, records, and previous audit reports. Developing an audit checklist or guide based on the identified requirements and documentation is essential for structuring the audit and ensuring all critical areas are examined. The auditor needs to be aware of the specific processes and activities within the auditee's organization that are within the audit scope. This includes understanding the product lifecycle, from design and development through production, distribution, and post-market surveillance. Furthermore, selecting appropriate audit techniques, such as interviews, observation of processes, and examination of records, is part of effective preparation. The auditor must also ensure they have the necessary competence and impartiality for the audit. Therefore, the most effective preparation involves a comprehensive review of the quality management system documentation, a clear understanding of the audit scope and objectives, and the development of a detailed audit plan and checklist aligned with ISO 13485, 2016 and relevant regulations. Question 10. During an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer producing implantable cardiac rhythm management devices, an auditor reviews the documentation supporting the production of a specific device model. The auditor notes that while the Device Master Record, DMR, contains detailed engineering drawings, material specifications, and assembly instructions, it lacks specific details regarding the environmental controls required for the cleanroom manufacturing area where critical subassemblies are processed. Furthermore, the DMR does not explicitly reference the validated sterilization process parameters. Given the stringent requirements for implantable devices, and the potential impact on sterility and biocompatibility. What is the most significant deficiency identified concerning the completeness and adequacy of the DMR? Option A. The DMR lacks detailed information on the device's intended use and patient population. Option B. The DMR does not include a comprehensive list of all suppliers for critical components. Option C. The DMR fails to adequately define the necessary environmental controls for critical manufacturing processes. Option D. The DMR's revision history is not readily accessible to all production personnel. The correct answer is C. The DMR fails to adequately define the necessary environmental controls for critical manufacturing processes. Explanation: the Device Master Record, DMR, is a compilation of records that defines the device and provides the means to produce the finished device. It is a critical document that serves as the single source of truth for device manufacturing. According to ISO 13485, 2016, the organization must establish and maintain a DMR that includes or references all the documents needed to produce the medical device. This encompasses design and development outputs, manufacturing procedures, specifications for materials, components and sub-assemblies, packaging and labeling specifications, and any other relevant documentation. The purpose of the DMR is to ensure that every device produced conforms to its intended design and specifications, thereby maintaining product quality and patient safety. An internal auditor's role is to verify that the organization's quality management system, including the maintenance and control of the DMR, is effective and compliant with the standard. The auditor would examine records to confirm that the DMR is complete, up-to-date, and accessible to personnel involved in production. This includes checking that changes to the DMR are managed through a documented change control process, ensuring that only approved versions are used in manufacturing. The auditor would also look for evidence that the DMR supports the traceability of materials and processes used in production. Question 11. An internal auditor is scheduled to audit the manufacturing process for a Class Roman II sterile implantable device. This auditor was part of the core team that designed and developed this specific device 2 years ago, overseeing the validation of its manufacturing process. Considering the principles of effective internal auditing for a medical device quality management system compliant with ISO 13485, 2016, what is the most appropriate course of action for the audit team leader? Option A. Allow the auditor to proceed, but have a senior quality manager observe their audit activities. Option B. Request the auditor to focus solely on documentation review and avoid direct observation of manufacturing operations. Option C. Reassign the audit of the manufacturing process for this specific device to another qualified internal auditor. Option D. Proceed with the audit, but ensure the auditor documents their prior involvement in the audit report. The correct answer is C. Reassign the audit of the manufacturing process for this specific device to another qualified internal auditor. Explanation: the effectiveness of an internal audit within a medical device organization, particularly concerning ISO 13485-2016, hinges significantly on the auditor's ability to maintain objectivity and impartiality. This principle is fundamental to ensuring that audit findings are based on factual evidence, and that the audit process itself is fair and unbiased. An auditor must avoid any situation where personal relationships, financial interests, or prior involvement with the audited area could compromise their judgment. This includes refraining from auditing departments or processes where they have direct managerial responsibility or have recently been involved in implementing corrective actions. The goal is to provide an independent assessment of the quality management system's conformity and effectiveness. Therefore, when an auditor has previously been responsible for the design and development of a particular medical device, auditing the subsequent manufacturing processes for that same device would present a clear conflict of interest, undermining the objectivity required by the standard and best auditing practices. This conflict would necessitate assigning a different auditor to ensure the integrity of the audit findings. Question 12. An internal auditor is reviewing the design and development records for a novel implantable device. They observe that while design inputs were clearly documented and design outputs were generated, there is no explicit record of a formal review occurring at the transition point between the conceptual design phase and the detailed engineering design phase. The project documentation simply shows the handover of conceptual drawings and specifications to the engineering team. According to ISO 13485, 2016, what is the most significant implication of this lack of documented review for the organization's quality management system? Option A. A minor procedural oversight that can be easily rectified by retrospectively documenting a review without further impact. Option B. Nonconformance with the requirement for systematic design reviews at suitable stages, potentially compromising the verification of design input requirements. Option C. A potential indication of inadequate risk management processes, as design failures are more likely to be missed. Option D. A violation of the Medical Device Regulation, MDR, requirements for design validation, which is a separate but related process. The correct answer is B. Nonconformance with the requirement for systematic design reviews at suitable stages, potentially compromising the verification of design input requirements. Explanation. The core of design and development controls in ISO 13485-2016, particularly concerning the transition from one design phase to another, is the establishment of formal design reviews. These reviews are critical for verifying that the design output meets the design input requirements and for identifying and addressing potential issues before they become costly to rectify. Clause 7. 3. 4. Design review mandates that the organization shall conduct systematic examinations of design and development at suitable stages to ensure that the requirements are met. The purpose is to evaluate the design's capability to fulfill the intended function and to identify any problems. This systematic examination is not a single event, but a series of planned activities throughout the design lifecycle. The output of these reviews, including any actions required and the authority responsible for the review, must be recorded. This process ensures that the design is progressing as intended and that all necessary criteria are satisfied for advancement to the next stage. Without documented evidence of these reviews, the organization cannot demonstrate compliance with the standards requirement for controlled design progression. Therefore, the absence of documented design reviews at phase transitions directly contravenes the intent and explicit requirements of ISO 13485, 2016. Question 13. An internal auditor is reviewing the risk management file for a novel class Roman II implantable cardiac pacemaker. The device's risk management process was established during initial design and development. During the audit, the auditor discovers that while initial hazards were identified and risk controls implemented, there is no documented process for re-evaluating risks based on post-market surveillance data, specifically concerning early device failures reported by a limited number of users. Which of the following best reflects the auditor's finding concerning the conformity of the risk management process to ISO 13485-2016 and its integration with risk management principles? Option A. The risk management process adequately addresses initial design risks, and post-market feedback is managed through a separate corrective action system, thus fulfilling the standards requirements. Option B. The auditor's finding is invalid because ISO 13485, 2016 primarily focuses on design and manufacturing risks, with post-market surveillance being a distinct regulatory requirement. Option C. The risk management process is incomplete as it fails to demonstrate continuous risk assessment and monitoring throughout the device's lifecycle, particularly in response to emerging post-market data. Option D. The risk management process is sufficient because the number of reported failures is statistically insignificant and does not warrant a formal re-evaluation of initial risk assessments. The correct answer is C. The risk management process is incomplete as it fails to demonstrate continuous risk assessment and monitoring throughout the device's lifecycle, particularly in response to emerging post-market data. Explanation. The risk management process for medical devices, as outlined in ISO 14971, 2019, and implicitly required by ISO 13485, 2016, is a continuous cycle. This cycle involves identifying hazards associated with a medical device, estimating and evaluating the associated risks, controlling these risks, and monitoring the effectiveness of the controls. The standard emphasizes that risk management should be applied throughout the entire product lifecycle, from initial concept and design through to decommissioning. When an internal auditor reviews the risk management file for a Class Roman II implantable device, they must verify that the organization has established and maintained a risk management process that aligns with the identified hazards and the potential severity of harm. The auditor's objective is to ensure that the documented risk management activities demonstrate a systematic approach to risk reduction, and that residual risks are acceptable when weighed against the intended benefits. This includes confirming that risk analysis and evaluation are performed, risk control measures are implemented and verified, and the overall residual risk acceptability is determined and documented. The effectiveness of the risk management process is a key audit focus, ensuring that it is integrated with other quality management system processes, such as design controls, post-market surveillance, and complaint handling. Therefore, an auditor would look for evidence that the risk management activities are not isolated, but are a living part of the QMS, informing decisions and driving improvements. The process must also address the entire life cycle, meaning that risks arising from manufacturing, use, and end-of-life disposal are considered. Question 14. An internal auditor is evaluating the effectiveness of a medical device manufacturer's quality management system, QMS, for sterile implantable devices. The organization has established clear quality objectives, including a target of less than 0.5% nonconforming units in the final sterilization batch release. During the audit, the auditor reviews production records, sterilization validation reports, and final product testing data. The data shows that over the last 6 months, the nonconformance rate for sterilization has averaged 0.45%, with individual batch rates ranging from 0.3% to 0.6%. The auditor also notes that the organization has implemented corrective actions for batches exceeding the 0.5% threshold, and these actions have led to a reduction in subsequent nonconformances. Which of the following best reflects the auditor's assessment of QMS effectiveness in relation to this specific objective? Option A. The QMS is partially effective, but further investigation is required into the root causes of batches exceeding the 0.5% threshold before a definitive conclusion can be drawn. Option B. The QMS is ineffective because some individual batches have exceeded the 0.5% nonconformance rate, indicating a systemic issue with the sterilization process. Option C. The QMS is effective because the overall trend shows improvement, and the organization is proactively managing nonconformances through corrective actions. Option D. The QMS is demonstrating effectiveness as the average nonconformance rate meets the established objective, and corrective actions are being implemented for deviations. Correct answer is D. The QMS is demonstrating effectiveness as the average nonconformance rate meets the established objective, and corrective actions are being implemented for deviations. Explanation: the effectiveness of a quality management system, QMS, is fundamentally tied to its ability to achieve its intended outcomes and improve its processes. ISO 13485, 2016, in its core intent, emphasizes a process approach to QMS development, implementation, and improvement. Clause 4.1. General requirements mandates that the organization establish, document, implement, maintain, and continually improve a QMS. This continuous improvement is driven by the systematic monitoring and measurement of processes and products, as well as the analysis of data. The internal audit process, as outlined in Clause 8.2.4, serves as a critical mechanism for evaluating the effectiveness of the QMS and identifying opportunities for improvement. Therefore, an internal auditor's primary focus when assessing QMS effectiveness must be on the organization's ability to consistently meet its stated quality objectives and regulatory requirements, which are the direct indicators of a functioning and improving system. This involves examining evidence of process performance, corrective actions, and management review outputs that demonstrate a commitment to enhancement. Question 15. Consider a scenario where an internal auditor for a medical device manufacturer, operating under ISO 13485-2016, observes a potential deviation in the sterilization validation process during an audit of the microbiology laboratory. The observed deviation involves an incomplete record of environmental monitoring data, which is critical for the validation of the sterilization cycle. What is the most appropriate immediate action for the internal auditor to take after documenting this observation, in accordance with the principles of responsibility, authority, and communication within a medical device quality management system? Option A. Escalate the finding directly to the highest level of executive management without initial notification to the quality management representative. Option B. Directly instruct the laboratory supervisor to immediately recollect and document the missing environmental monitoring data. Option C. Recommend that the next scheduled external audit include a specific focus on the microbiology laboratory's record-keeping practices. Option D. Report the potential nonconformity to the quality management representative or a designated management individual with the authority to initiate corrective actions. Correct answer is D. Report the potential nonconformity to the quality management representative or a designated management individual with the authority to initiate corrective actions. Explanation. The effectiveness of an internal audit program hinges on clear communication channels and defined responsibilities within the quality management system. ISO 13485, 2016, specifically in clauses related to management responsibility and internal audits, emphasizes the need for documented procedures to ensure these aspects are adequately addressed. When an internal auditor identifies a potential nonconformity during an audit of a critical manufacturing process, the subsequent actions must align with the established quality policy and the defined responsibilities for reporting and addressing such issues. The auditor's role is to objectively assess conformity to the documented system, including the procedures for handling deviations and communicating findings. The quality management representative, or a designated individual with similar authority, is typically responsible for ensuring that the quality management system is maintained and that audit findings are reported and acted upon. Therefore, the most appropriate immediate action for the auditor, after documenting the observation, is to communicate the potential nonconformity to the management representative, or a designated individual, who has the authority and responsibility to initiate corrective actions and ensure appropriate communication throughout the organization, as mandated by the quality management system, and relevant regulatory requirements such as those outlined by regulatory bodies like the FDA or European authorities. This ensures that the issue is formally recognized and managed according to the organization's established processes for quality assurance and regulatory compliance. Question 16. When auditing a medical device manufacturer that utilizes custom-developed software for critical diagnostic functions within its Class Roman II imaging equipment, what is the primary objective of the internal auditor when evaluating the software validation process, according to ISO 13485-2016? Option A. To ensure that the software development team has followed a waterfall model for all software iterations, as this is the most robust development methodology. Option B. To confirm that the software source code has been independently reviewed by a third-party cybersecurity firm for potential vulnerabilities. Option C. To ascertain that the software validation plan includes every conceivable edge case, even those with a probability of occurrence below \1 times 10⁻⁹. Option D. To verify that the software validation activities adequately confirm the software's ability to consistently meet specified user needs and intended uses, and that all validation activities are appropriately documented. Correct answer is D. To verify that the software validation activities adequately confirm the software's ability to consistently meet specified user needs and intended uses, and that all validation activities are appropriately documented. Explanation. ISO 13485, 2016 Clause 7. 5. 1. Which addresses control of production and service provision, mandates that organizations must validate processes where the resulting output cannot be verified by subsequent monitoring or measurement. Software used in medical devices, particularly that which directly impacts the device's performance, safety, or intended use, falls under this requirement. Software validation is a critical aspect of ensuring that software consistently performs as intended under specified conditions throughout its lifecycle. This process confirms that the software meets user needs and intended uses, and that it is free from defects that could compromise patient safety or device efficacy. The validation activities should be documented, including the validation plan, execution records, and a final validation report, demonstrating that the software has been rigorously tested and verified against its specified requirements. This aligns with the broader quality management system principles of ensuring product conformity and customer satisfaction, as well as regulatory expectations for medical device software, such as those outlined by the FDA's General Principles of Software Validation. The focus is on building quality into the software from the design phase, and then proving its fitness for purpose through comprehensive validation. Question 17. During an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer specializing in implantable cardiac devices, an auditor reviews the documented quality policy and objectives. The quality policy states a commitment to delivering safe and effective devices through rigorous design controls and continuous process enhancement. The documented quality objectives for the current year include increasing production throughput by 15% and reducing raw material scrap by 10%. The auditor notes that no specific objective directly addresses the rigorous design controls or continuous process enhancement aspects mentioned in the policy, beyond general production metrics. Considering the intent of ISO 13485/2016 regarding the establishment and review of quality policy and objectives, what is the most significant implication for the internal auditor's findings? Option A. Quality objectives are measurable and achievable, which is sufficient for compliance with ISO 13485/2016, regardless of their direct linkage to the policy's qualitative statements. Option B. The quality objectives are not sufficiently aligned with the stated quality policy, indicating a potential gap in the QMS's ability to systematically address all policy commitments. Option C. The auditor should focus solely on the effectiveness of the production throughput and scrap reduction objectives, as these are the only quantifiable targets within the QMS. Option D. The quality policy is a high-level statement and does not require direct translation into specific, measurable objectives for each clause mentioned. The correct answer is B. The quality objectives are not sufficiently aligned with the stated quality policy, indicating a potential gap in the QMS's ability to systematically address all policy commitments. Explanation: the quality policy and objectives are foundational elements of a medical device quality management system, as mandated by ISO 13485/2016. The quality policy, established by top management, provides a framework for setting quality objectives and demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance, customer satisfaction, and continuous improvement. Quality objectives must be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, SMART, and aligned with the quality policy. For an internal auditor, understanding the relationship between the quality policy and objectives is crucial when assessing the effectiveness of the QMS. The policy sets the overarching direction, and objectives translate this direction into actionable, measurable targets. If objectives are not measurable or not aligned with the policy, it indicates a potential deficiency in the QMS design or implementation. For instance, if the quality policy emphasizes reducing customer complaints, but the quality objectives focus solely on production output without addressing complaint reduction metrics, an auditor would identify a nonconformity. The policy serves as the guiding principle, and objectives are the concrete steps to achieve the desired outcomes outlined in that policy. Therefore, the auditor's role involves verifying that objectives are derived from and support the quality policy, and that progress towards these objectives is monitored and evaluated. Question 18. When conducting the closing meeting for an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer's quality management system, which of the following actions by the lead auditor best exemplifies adherence to the principles of effective communication and the requirements of ISO 13485/2016, particularly concerning the presentation of findings related to process controls and product conformity? Option A. Immediately assigning blame for all identified nonconformities to specific individuals within the auditee's organization and demanding instant corrective actions without further discussion or analysis. Option B. Focusing solely on minor nonconformities and overlooking any significant observations or potential risks to product quality to maintain a positive relationship with the auditee's department heads. Option C. Providing a detailed, unedited transcript of all interviews conducted during the audit, allowing auditee management to review and comment on each individual statement before any conclusions are drawn. Option D. Presenting a summary of all identified nonconformities, observations, and areas of good practice, clearly linking them to specific ISO 13485-2016 clauses and relevant regulatory requirements, and discussing the implications for product safety and regulatory compliance. The correct answer is D. Presenting a summary of all identified nonconformities, observations, and areas of good practice, clearly linking them to specific ISO 13485-2016 clauses and relevant regulatory requirements, and discussing the implications for product safety and regulatory compliance. Explanation. The closing meeting of an internal audit is a critical phase where the audit team communicates findings to the audit management. ISO 13485-2016, specifically in the context of auditing quality management systems for medical devices, emphasizes the importance of clear and objective communication. Clause 7.1.3, Infrastructure, and Clause 7.1.4, Work Environment, while not directly dictating closing meeting content, are areas that might have findings. However, the core purpose of the closing meeting is to present the audit results, which include conformity with requirements, nonconformities, and opportunities for improvement. It is also a forum to discuss the scope and limitations of the audit, as well as the follow-up actions. The auditee's perspective on the audit process and their commitment to addressing findings are crucial elements. The auditor's role is to ensure that the findings are presented factually and without bias, facilitating a constructive dialogue for corrective action. The emphasis is on the audit outcome and its implications for the quality management system's effectiveness, particularly concerning patient safety and regulatory compliance, as mandated by regulations like the EU Medical Device Regulation, MDR, or FDA regulations. The closing meeting serves as the official handover of the audit's conclusions, ensuring all relevant parties understand the system's current state and the path forward for enhancement. Question 19. During an audit of a novel diagnostic imaging device, an internal auditor is reviewing the risk management file. The manufacturer has documented a residual risk associated with a potential software anomaly that could lead to a slightly inaccurate measurement in a rare clinical scenario. While technically feasible to implement a further software patch to mitigate this specific anomaly, the development effort is substantial, and the likelihood of the anomaly causing a clinically significant misdiagnosis is assessed as extremely low, with a very low severity if it were to occur. The manufacturer's documented rationale for deeming this residual risk acceptable is based on the extensive efforts already made to reduce risks to as low as reasonably practicable, (ALARP), and the significant benefits the device offers in terms of early disease detection. Which of the following best reflects the auditor's assessment of the manufacturer's justification for overall residual risk acceptability in this context, according to ISO 13485-2016 and ISO 14971 principles? Option A. The residual risk is acceptable if the manufacturer can demonstrate that the current level of risk is justified by the overall benefit risk of the device, even if further technical reduction is possible, provided this justification is well documented and aligns with the state of the art. Option B. The residual risk is only acceptable if all technically feasible risk reduction measures have been implemented, regardless of the effort involved or the resulting benefit-risk balance. Option C. The residual risk is acceptable if the manufacturer can prove that no other organization in the industry has implemented a similar risk reduction measure for comparable devices. Option D. The residual risk is acceptable solely based on the extreme rarity of the anomaly occurring, without requiring a formal benefit-risk assessment or consideration of the state of the art. The correct answer is A. The residual risk is acceptable if the manufacturer can demonstrate that the current level of risk is justified by the overall benefit-risk of the device, even if further technical reduction is possible, provided this justification is well documented and aligns with the state of the art. Explanation. The acceptability of residual risk for a medical device is determined by a comprehensive evaluation that considers not only the technical feasibility of risk reduction, but also the clinical context and regulatory requirements. ISO 13485-2016 in conjunction with ISO 14971, mandates that the organization must establish and maintain criteria for the acceptability of risk. This involves a systematic process of risk analysis and evaluation. The overall residual risk is deemed acceptable if it is reduced to a level considered appropriate given the general state of the art, the intended use of the device, and the information available. This assessment is not solely based on whether further reduction is technically possible, but rather on whether the remaining risk is justifiable in light of the benefits the device provides to the patient and the intended user. An internal auditor would assess whether the organization has a documented policy and procedure for risk acceptability that aligns with these principles and is consistently applied. This includes verifying that the evaluation considers the intended use, potential misuse, and the overall benefit-risk determination. The organization must demonstrate that the residual risks are controlled to a degree that is acceptable to all relevant stakeholders, including regulatory bodies and users, taking into account the current scientific and technical knowledge. The absence of a known method to further reduce a specific risk does not automatically render the residual risk acceptable. Rather, the justification for acceptability must be based on a broader assessment of the risk-benefit balance. Question 20. During an internal audit of a facility manufacturing sterile implantable devices, an auditor observes a technician performing a critical cleaning step for a component. The technician is wearing standard lab attire, but not the designated sterile gowning and face mask as specified in the site's standard operating procedure, SOP, for this particular process, which is designed to prevent microbial contamination. This SOP is directly linked to the organization's quality policy and regulatory commitments under ISO 13485, 2016, particularly concerning process validation and control. What is the primary purpose of the auditor's observation in this scenario? Option A, to verify that the documented cleaning procedure is being followed as written and to identify potential deviations that could impact product quality and patient safety. Option B, to gather evidence for updating the cleaning SOP based on the technician's personal preferences for gowning. Option C, to assess the technician's overall efficiency and productivity during the cleaning process for performance evaluation. Option D, to confirm that the technician has received adequate training on general laboratory safety protocols, irrespective of specific process requirements. The correct answer is A, to verify that the documented cleaning procedure is being followed as written and to identify potential deviations that could impact product quality and patient safety. Explanation: ISO 13485, 2016, specifically in the context of internal auditing, emphasizes the auditor's role in observing activities to verify conformity with the quality management system and regulatory requirements. Clause 8.2.4 Internal audit mandates that the organization shall conduct internal audits at planned intervals to ensure that the quality management system conforms to the requirements of ISO 13485, 2016 and the organization's own requirements, and that it is effectively implemented and maintained. During an internal audit, an auditor's observation of a manufacturing process, such as the assembly of a sterile medical device, is a direct method of gathering objective evidence. This evidence is crucial for determining whether the documented procedures, including those for environmental controls, personnel hygiene, and product handling, are actually being followed. For instance, observing a technician sterilizing a critical component without the required personal protective equipment, PPE, or failing to adhere to the specified dwell time for a disinfectant directly relates to the effectiveness of controls outlined in the quality system and potentially in regulations like the EU Medical Device Regulation, MDR, or the US FDA Quality System Regulation, 21 CFR Part 820. The auditor's task is to compare the observed practice against the documented standard and identify any discrepancies. These discrepancies, if significant, will be documented as nonconformities. The focus of observation is on the actual implementation of processes, not just the existence of documented procedures. This provides a higher level of assurance regarding the system's effectiveness in compliance. Question 21. An internal audit of a Class Roman II implantable device manufacturer identified a recurring issue with inconsistent sterility assurance levels due to variations in the sterilization cycle validation process. The quality team implemented a corrective action involving enhanced operator training and a revised sterilization parameter monitoring protocol. As an internal auditor, what is the primary criterion for verifying the effectiveness of this corrective action? Option A. Examination of the updated risk management file to ensure the identified sterilization variability was adequately addressed in the hazard analysis. Option B. Confirmation through objective evidence that the sterilization cycle consistently achieves the validated parameters and that no subsequent nonconformities related to sterility have occurred for a defined period. Option C. Assessment of the reduction in the number of customer complaints related to device sterility after the corrective action was implemented. Option D. Review of the updated training records for all personnel involved in the sterilization process to ensure compliance with the revised protocol. The correct answer is B. Confirmation through objective evidence that the sterilization cycle consistently achieves the validated parameters and that no subsequent nonconformities related to sterility have occurred for a defined period. Explanation. The effectiveness of a corrective action is determined by its ability to prevent the recurrence of the identified nonconformity. This involves verifying that the root cause has been addressed and that the implemented action has successfully eliminated or reduced the likelihood of the problem happening again. ISO 13485, 2016, specifically in Clause 8. 5. 2. Corrective action mandates that the organization shall determine the actions to be taken to eliminate the causes of nonconformities in order to prevent recurrence. It also requires verifying that the corrective action taken has no adverse effect on the ability of the medical device to meet any safety or performance requirements. Therefore, an internal auditor evaluating corrective actions must assess whether the organization has confirmed that the implemented solution has indeed resolved the issue and that the risk of recurrence is acceptably low. This confirmation typically involves monitoring relevant process data, customer feedback, or product performance metrics after the corrective action has been in place for a sufficient period. The focus is on objective evidence, demonstrating the absence of the original nonconformity and its contributing factors. Question 22. During an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer's QMS, an auditor observes that a newly hired quality control inspector, responsible for visual inspection of sterile syringes, has not yet completed the full in-house training module on critical defect identification for this specific product line, despite being assigned to the inspection role for 2 weeks. The organization's documented procedures outline a mandatory 3-week training period for all new QC personnel before independent work assignment. What is the most appropriate audit finding for the internal auditor to record, considering the requirements of ISO 13485-2016 Clause 6? 2. Option A. Observation. The quality control inspector has not completed the full in-house training module for sterile syringe defect identification. Option B. Nonconformity. The training procedure for quality control personnel is inadequate as it does not ensure timely completion of mandatory modules before work assignment. Option C. Opportunity for improvement. The organization should expedite the training process for new quality control inspectors to ensure faster integration into operational roles. Option D. Nonconformity. The organization's process for ensuring personnel competence did not prevent the assignment of an inspector to a critical role without completion of mandatory training, indicating a potential breakdown in the competence management system. The correct answer is D. Nonconformity. The organization's process for ensuring personnel competence did not prevent the assignment of an inspector to a critical role without completion of mandatory training, indicating a potential breakdown in the competence management system. Explanation. The effectiveness of a quality management system, QMS, relies heavily on the competence of its personnel. ISO 13485, 2016, in Clause 6. 2. Emphasizes the organization's responsibility to determine the necessary competence for personnel performing work affecting product quality. This includes providing training or taking other actions to achieve that competence and evaluating the effectiveness of the actions taken. An internal auditor's role is to verify that these requirements are being met. When an auditor identifies a gap in personnel competence, the focus should be on the organization's process for identifying, addressing, and verifying the effectiveness of actions taken to rectify that gap. This involves assessing whether the organization has a systematic approach to competence management, including initial assessment, training needs identification, training delivery, and post-training evaluation. The auditor's findings should reflect the systemic failure or success in managing competence, not just the isolated incident of a single employee's lack of skill. Therefore, the most appropriate audit finding would be related to the organization's established process for ensuring and maintaining personnel competence, as this directly impacts the overall effectiveness of the QMS in relation to product safety and regulatory compliance. This aligns with the principle of auditing the system, not just individual performance in isolation. Question 23. When performing an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer's quality management system in accordance with ISO 13485-2016, what is the fundamental role of the technical documentation as it pertains to the device itself and the processes that create it? Option A. Serve as the primary source of objective evidence for verifying the device's conformity to specified requirements and the effectiveness of the quality management system's control over its lifecycle. Option B. To provide a historical record of all customer complaints and nonconformities, primarily for post-market surveillance analysis and trend identification. Option C. To act as a comprehensive marketing portfolio, showcasing the device's features and benefits to potential investors and regulatory bodies for initial approval. Option D. To detail the internal audit schedule and findings, ensuring that all planned audits are completed and documented according to the organization's audit program. The correct answer is A. To serve as the primary source of objective evidence for verifying the device's conformity to specified requirements and the effectiveness of the quality management system's control over its lifecycle. Explanation. The question asks about the primary purpose of the technical documentation when conducting an internal audit against ISO 13485-2016. Technical documentation, as defined by the standard and regulatory requirements like the EU Medical Device Regulation, MDR, or the US FDA Quality System Regulation, is the comprehensive collection of information that describes the device, its intended use, its design and manufacturing processes, and evidence of its safety and performance. For an internal auditor, this documentation serves as the benchmark against which the organization's processes and products are evaluated. It provides the objective evidence needed to determine if the quality management system is effectively implemented and maintained, and if the medical device itself meets its specified requirements. Specifically, the technical documentation is crucial for verifying that the device's design and development have been adequately controlled, that risk management activities are properly integrated, and that the device consistently meets its performance and safety specifications throughout its lifecycle. While other aspects are important, the core function of this documentation in an audit context is to provide the foundational evidence for conformity assessment. Question 24. During an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer specializing in implantable cardiac rhythm management devices, the auditor is reviewing the process for handling customer feedback and the subsequent incorporation of design changes. The company receives numerous reports from clinicians detailing subtle performance anomalies that, while not immediately critical, could impact long-term patient outcomes. The quality management system documentation indicates a process for analyzing customer complaints, but the auditor observes that the documented procedure for translating these clinical observations into formal design input changes is vague and lacks specific criteria for initiating a design review based on performance trends. The company has also recently faced increased scrutiny from regulatory bodies regarding post-market surveillance data. Which of the following aspects of the quality management system, as defined by ISO 13485-2016, is most likely to be inadequately controlled, posing a significant risk to regulatory compliance and patient safety? Option A. The process for determining, reviewing, and controlling customer and regulatory requirements for product realization. Option B. The methodology for calibrating and maintaining measurement and test equipment used in production. Option C. The effectiveness of the supplier evaluation and control process for critical component suppliers. Option D. The adequacy of the internal audit program in identifying and reporting management system nonconformities. The correct answer is A. The process for determining, reviewing, and controlling customer and regulatory requirements for product realization. Explanation: ISO 13485, 2016, specifically in its clauses related to customer-related processes, emphasizes the importance of clearly defining and communicating product requirements. Clause 7. 1. Planning of product realization, and Clause 7. 2. Customer-related processes are central to this. Clause 7. 2. 1. Determination of requirements related to the product mandates that an organization must determine requirements specified by the customer, including those for delivery and post-delivery activities. It also requires determining requirements not stated by the customer but necessary for the specified use or intended use, as known by the organization, and any applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. Furthermore, the organization must review these requirements to ensure they are adequately defined, and that any differences between the contract or purchase order and the proposal are resolved. The establishment of a robust process for capturing, reviewing, and communicating customer and regulatory requirements is fundamental to ensuring that the medical device meets its intended purpose and complies with relevant legislation, such as the Medical Device Regulation (MDR) in Europe or the FDA's Quality System Regulation 21 CFR Part 820 in the United States. The internal auditor's role is to verify that this process is effective in practice, ensuring that all relevant requirements are identified, documented, and understood by all involved personnel, thereby preventing nonconformities and ensuring product safety and efficacy. The identification and control of these requirements form the bedrock of a compliant and effective quality management system for medical devices. Question 25. During an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer specializing in implantable neurostimulators, the auditor reviews customer feedback logs and complaint reports spanning the last 3 fiscal years. Analysis of the data reveals a consistent, statistically significant upward trend in complaints specifically related to the battery longevity of Model X. The /35% increase in reported premature battery depletion over the past 18 months compared to the preceding 18-month period. This trend has been noted across multiple geographic regions. Which of the following is the most appropriate finding for the internal auditor to document regarding the effectiveness of the organization's measurement, analysis, and improvement processes in relation to this observed trend? Option A. The observed trend in battery longevity complaints for Model X, while noted, is considered within acceptable statistical variance and does not necessitate further investigation according to the organization's internal quality metrics. Option B. The organization has correctly identified the increase in battery longevity complaints for Model X as a minor issue, requiring only a review of the current complaint handling procedure. Option C. The auditor should recommend immediate cessation of Model X production due to the significant increase in battery longevity complaints, irrespective of root cause analysis. Option D. The organization has not adequately analyzed the trend of increasing customer complaints regarding Model X battery longevity, indicating a potential deficiency in utilizing quality data for systemic improvement as required by ISO 13485, 2016. The correct answer is D. The organization has not adequately analyzed the trend of increasing customer complaints regarding Model X battery longevity, indicating a potential deficiency in utilizing quality data for systemic improvement as required by ISO 13485, 2016. Explanation: the core principle being tested here is the systematic approach to analyzing quality data and identifying trends for improvement, specifically within the context of ISO 13485, 2016. Clause 8. 2. 1 mandates that the organization shall establish and maintain documented procedures for internal audits. Clause 8. 2. 3 requires that the organization shall monitor and, where applicable, measure processes of the quality management system. The analysis of this data is crucial for identifying areas needing improvement. A statistically significant increase in customer complaints related to a specific product's performance, when viewed over several audit cycles, points towards a systemic issue rather than isolated incidents. This trend analysis, as required by Clause 8. 2. 3, is fundamental to the measure, analyze, and improve aspect of the QMS. The internal auditor's role is to verify that such data is collected, analyzed, and used to drive corrective and preventive actions. Identifying a recurring pattern of complaints directly informs the need for deeper investigation into the root cause of the product performance issues, which could stem from design, manufacturing, or even post-market surveillance processes. The auditor's objective is to ensure the QMS effectively uses this information to enhance product safety and efficacy, aligning with the overall intent of ISO 13485, 2016. Question 26. An internal auditor is evaluating a medical device manufacturer's adherence to the process approach as defined by ISO 13485, 2016. The auditor observes that while individual departmental procedures are well documented, there is a lack of clearly defined interfaces and feedback loops between the design verification and validation activities and the subsequent manufacturing process validation. This results in a disconnect where design changes, identified as necessary during validation, are not always seamlessly integrated into the manufacturing validation plans, leading to potential delays and rework. Which aspect of the process approach is most significantly not being effectively implemented in this scenario? Option A. Documentation of all inputs and outputs for every distinct operational activity. Option B. Understanding and management of interrelated processes and their sequences and interactions. Option C. Establishment of clear quality objectives and policies for each individual process. Option D. Implementation of statistical techniques for process control and monitoring. The correct answer is B. Understanding and management of interrelated processes and their sequences and interactions. Explanation. The term process approach in ISO 13485, 2016 emphasizes the understanding and management of interrelated processes within a quality management system. It involves defining the inputs, activities, outputs, and interdependencies of these processes to achieve intended results. This approach facilitates the identification of process inefficiencies, optimization of resource utilization, and continuous improvement. An internal auditor assessing compliance with the process approach would look for evidence of documented processes, clear responsibilities, defined performance indicators, and systematic monitoring and control mechanisms. The auditor would also evaluate how the organization uses process outputs and feedback to drive improvements. Understanding the interconnectedness of processes, such as design and development, production, and post-market surveillance, is crucial for ensuring the safety and effectiveness of medical devices. The process approach is a foundational concept that underpins the entire quality management system, enabling a more holistic and effective management of organizational activities. Question 27. When initiating an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer's design and development process under ISO 13485, 2016, what is the most crucial objective for the lead auditor to achieve during the opening meeting with the auditee's R&D manager and quality assurance representative? Option A. To formally confirm the audit's defined scope, objectives, and agreed-upon schedule, while establishing clear lines of communication for the duration of the audit. Option B. To provide a detailed overview of the specific design history file, DHF, sections that will be scrutinized during the audit. Option C. To present a preliminary list of potential nonconformities identified through pre-audit document review. Option D. To obtain immediate access to all current and historical design validation protocols and reports without prior arrangement. Correct answer is A. To formally confirm the audit's defined scope, objectives, and agreed-upon schedule, while establishing clear lines of communication for the duration of the audit. Explanation. The opening meeting of an internal audit is a critical phase that sets the tone and scope for the entire audit process. According to ISO 13485, 2016, Clause 8. 2. 4. The organization shall conduct internal audits at planned intervals to determine whether the quality management system conforms to planned arrangements, to the requirements of this international standard, and to the quality management system, requirements established by the organization, and whether the quality management system is effectively implemented and maintained. The opening meeting serves as the formal commencement of the audit. Its primary objectives are to introduce the audit team, confirm the audit scope and objectives, establish communication channels, and agree on the audit schedule. It is also an opportunity to clarify any initial questions the auditee might have regarding the audit process. The auditor must ensure that the auditee understands the purpose and boundaries of the audit, and that the auditee's personnel are aware of the audit's commencement and their role in facilitating it. This includes confirming the availability of necessary documentation and personnel for interviews. The opening meeting is not the place to discuss specific audit findings or nonconformities. Those are reserved for the closing meeting. The focus is on establishing a collaborative and transparent audit engagement. Question 28. Consider a scenario where an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer producing sterile implantable devices identifies that a batch of finished product was inadvertently released to the warehouse distribution area without the final sterilization validation report being completed and approved. The device's manufacturing process was otherwise deemed compliant up to the point of sterilization. According to ISO 13485, 2016, what is the most appropriate immediate action for the quality management system to take regarding this non-conforming output to prevent its unintended use or delivery? Option A. Allow the batch to remain in the warehouse distribution area, but place a temporary hold on its shipment pending the completion of the sterilization validation report, assuming the sterilization process itself was likely successful. Option B. Segregate the affected batch of finished product immediately. Initiate a documented investigation into the root cause of the release without the final validation, and determine the appropriate disposition, which may include re-sterilization or destruction, while ensuring regulatory notification if applicable. Option C. Reprocess the entire batch through the sterilization cycle again, and then relabel it as a new batch, bypassing the need for a formal non-conforming product investigation to save time. Option D. Proceed with the shipment of the batch to customers, while concurrently expediting the completion and approval of the sterilization validation report, with a plan to issue a field corrective action if the validation fails. Correct answer is B. Segregate the affected batch of finished product immediately. Initiate a documented investigation into the root cause of the release without the final validation, and determine the appropriate disposition, which may include re-sterilization or destruction, while ensuring regulatory notification if applicable. Explanation. The core principle of controlling nonconforming output in ISO 13485, 2016, specifically in relation to Clause 8.3, is to ensure that nonconforming product is identified and controlled to prevent its unintended use or delivery. This involves establishing documented procedures for handling such outputs. When nonconforming output is detected, the organization must determine whether to correct it, segregate it, recall it, or dispose of it. The decision-making process for disposition must be based on the nature of the nonconformity, its potential impact on the device's safety and performance, and any applicable regulatory requirements. Furthermore, the organization must document the nonconformity and the actions taken, and where required by regulation, notify the relevant regulatory authorities. The emphasis is on preventing the release of product that does not meet specified requirements, thereby safeguarding patient safety and ensuring regulatory compliance. This control extends to all stages of the product lifecycle, from design and development through to post-market surveillance. The organization's quality management system must provide the framework for identifying, documenting, evaluating, segregating, and disposing of nonconforming product, and for authorizing its rework, acceptance by concession, or rejection. The disposition must be recorded and approved by authorized personnel. Question 29. When conducting an internal audit of a medical device manufacturer's quality management system, an auditor is reviewing the design history file, DHF, for a Class Roman II implantable device that has undergone several post-market design modifications. Which of the following aspects of the DHF would be of paramount importance to the auditor to ensure compliance with ISO 13485, 2016, Clause 7, 3, 10, and relevant regulatory requirements for post-market changes? Option A. A detailed list of all raw materials used in the initial design and a supplier qualification matrix for each component, irrespective of whether they were affected by post-market changes. Option B. Comprehensive documentation of each design change, including the rationale, impact assessment, verification and validation activities performed on the modified design, and evidence of regulatory notifications or approvals for each modification. Option C. The complete manufacturing process flowcharts for the original device design and a comparison of these to any updated process documentation, without specific reference to the design change validation. Option D. Records of all customer complaints received during the device's initial launch phase, along with a summary of user training materials developed before any modifications were implemented. The correct answer is B. Comprehensive documentation of each design change, including the rationale, impact assessment, verification and validation activities performed on the modified design, and evidence of regulatory notifications or approvals for each modification. Explanation. The Design History File, DHF, is a compilation of records that describes the design and development of a medical device. ISO 13485, 2016, Clause 7. 3. 10. Mandates that the organization must establish and maintain a DHF. This file serves as evidence that the device was designed in accordance with the approved design and development plans and the applicable regulatory requirements. It should include or have references to all documents that define the design, including design inputs, design outputs, design reviews, verification and validation activities, design changes, and regulatory submissions. The DHF is crucial for demonstrating traceability and compliance throughout the product lifecycle. When an internal auditor reviews a DHF for a device that has undergone post-market modifications, the auditor must verify that all changes made to the device's design are adequately documented within the DHF. This includes ensuring that the design change control process, as outlined in Clause 7. 3. 9, was followed, that the impact of the change was assessed, and that the updated design outputs, verification, and validation results are incorporated. Specifically, for a device that has had post-market design changes, the DHF must contain records of these changes, the rationale for them, the results of any revalidation or re-verification performed due to the changes, and evidence of regulatory notification or approval if required by applicable regulations, such as those enforced by the FDA e.g. 21 CFR Part 820, or other regulatory bodies. The auditor's focus would be on the completeness and accuracy of these records to ensure the current design is fully represented and compliant. Question 30. Consider a scenario where an internal auditor is evaluating the effectiveness of a medical device manufacturer's complaint handling process, as mandated by ISO 13485-2016, Clause 8. 2. 1. During the audit, the auditor interviews a customer service representative who states that most complaints are resolved quickly. However, when the auditor requests to review records demonstrating the timeliness of complaint resolution, the representative indicates that detailed timelines for each complaint are not consistently logged. Which of the following approaches best reflects the auditor's responsibility to gather objective evidence in this situation? Option A. Focus the audit on other areas of the QMS, concluding that the complaint handling process is likely compliant based on the qualitative feedback received. Option B. Request the customer service representative to provide anecdotal examples of resolved complaints, using these examples as a basis for assessing timeliness. Option C. Accept the customer service representative's statement as sufficient evidence of timely complaint resolution, assuming the process is generally effective. Option D. Document a nonconformity related to the lack of consistent record-keeping for complaint resolution timelines, citing the interview statement and the absence of specific documented evidence. The correct answer is D. Document a nonconformity related to the lack of consistent record-keeping for complaint resolution timelines, citing the interview statement and the absence of specific documented evidence. Explanation. The core principle of evidence-based auditing, as applied to ISO 13485-2016, is the reliance on factual findings obtained through observation, interviews, and examination of records to support audit conclusions and recommendations. This contrasts with relying on assumptions, hearsay, or subjective opinions. For an internal auditor to effectively assess compliance with the quality management system, QMS, and relevant regulations, such as the European Union's Medical Device Regulation, MDR, or the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's FDA Quality System Regulation, 21 CFR Part 820, they must gather objective evidence. This evidence serves as the foundation for identifying nonconformities, areas for improvement, and confirming the effectiveness of implemented controls. When an auditor finds a deviation from a documented procedure, for example, the evidence would be the specific document reviewed, the date of review, the section of the document that was not followed, and the specific observation or record that demonstrates the noncompliance. Without this concrete data, any audit finding would be unsubstantiated and lack the authority to drive corrective action. Therefore, the auditor's primary responsibility is to meticulously collect and document this objective evidence to ensure the integrity and validity of the audit process and its outcomes, which are critical for maintaining the safety and performance of medical devices.